Good evening, and welcome to Vigilant Broadcasting, the station of opportunity, presents The Author's Corner, with your host, author Kimberly McLemore, as she welcomes her guests into the studio to discuss excerpts of their book.
All right, good evening and welcome to Vigilant Broadcasting Radio Station. I am your host and author, Kimberly McLemore, and thank you for tuning in tonight to my show, The Author's Corner. Our sponsor for tonight's show is Sage Solutions GTM LLC. You can find them on their website at www.sagegesolutionsgtm.com. They also have a great event coming up on Sunday, June the 23rd from 1 to 3:30 p.m. called the Children's Tea and Etiquette Training at the Microsoft Store in Tyson's Corner. For more information and registration, you want to contact Tia Young at 703-843-4076. All right, let's get on with the show. First, I'm going to talk to you just for a couple of minutes and tell you a little bit about myself and the purpose of the show. I am the author of How to Be a Success by Just Being You, memoir, Deception of the Heart, a real look into domestic violence, and my newest book, Are You Living or Existing? The Pros and Cons of Balancing Life. I am also the founder and CEO of the Women's Small Business Initiative, LLC, the host in the podcast show, Your Resource for Success on iHeartRadio and Spotify, and I am the founder of Author Kimberly McLemore, LLC, co-owner of Talk Radio and TV Network, LLP, and owner of Vigilant Broadcasting. The purpose of this show is to provide a platform for our new and existing authors, giving them opportunity to promote their books, their events, speaking engagements, and tell us where we can get a copy, of course, of the book. So let me just introduce to you my special guest, Russ Anderson. He is the author of Who Are You Calling a BITCH, a guide to a happier relationship for the Black King or Queen. Russ thrives on writing self-help nonfiction. He was born in Seattle, raised in Phoenix, where he loves to read, paint, draw, listen to R&B music while enjoying time with his children. Who Are You Calling a BITCH is Russ's debut novel, and it's a beautiful read, which will be followed up by his second book, The Crips and Blood, Uncle Sam's Little Puppets. Without further ado, please help me welcome my special guest, Russ Anderson. Good evening, Russ.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm good.
All right. Well, it is a pleasure having you on the show tonight. I'm excited. I know everybody's been paying attention to all the promotion behind this because the title itself is got a million things that we are going to be talking and diving into later on. But what I like for you to do is tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I'm Russ Anderson. I was born in Seattle, and I was raised in Phoenix, Arizona, and I spent a little time in Los Angeles, but Phoenix is my home.
Mhm.
Before I got into writing, I was I used to be off into gangs, and I got off into the gang lifestyle because I thought that the gang was actually my family, and I learned quickly the gangs was not my family. That was the wrong turn in life. So while I was in gangs, I indulged in a lot in my life. I was into drug selling. I was into just doing all types of mischief, which landed me in prison. So while I was in prison, I went through a lot of things. I went through a lot of soul searching, and I was able to come to the grips to where I was, I loved writing, and my writing started coming out. I really didn't want it to come out while I was in prison, but you never know when it'll come out in life, and it came out in prison. So while I was in prison, I started writing little short stories, writing poems, and, writing letters for people who couldn't write. And, I discovered that writing was my passion, and I loved it, and I also loved helping people. So when I was released from federal prison, I started helping people. I started writing, and I took the initiative to just turn some of my writings into a book, which this materialized, my book, Who Are You Calling a BITCH? And it materialized into a beautiful thing because it's been helping a lot of people. And so by that, I was able to just come up with my next book, which I read, and I'm probably like 90% done with it. The Crips and Bloods, Uncle Sam's Little Puppets. So, that's basically it. I'm out here living.
You are, and listening to your story, we hear a lot about these types of stories, about what people go through in their lives when it comes to, having to be in prison and then coming out. But the thing that you're doing is that you're doing something positive. So talk a little bit to the listeners about what that scenario and what it felt like to be in prison. Like I said, you were doing the things that would lead you to that, being involved with drugs, selling drugs, and all those other things. But what was that real, true, defining moment while you were at federal prison, then that made you decide that you really needed to do more focusing on your life personally, and then having those experiences, and then obviously writing them down? So talk a little bit about that defining moment.
Well, while I was incarcerated, I've been incarcerated since a youth. I've been in juvenile systems, and I've been in prison a couple of times. And the reason why I was in prison, the first time I went to prison, I went for drug trafficking. I used to sell drugs, and I was sending drugs across to various cities across the United States. So that landed me in prison the first time, and then the other times when I went to the federal prison, I went for weapons charges. I was dealing in weapons and guns, so I landed in federal prison. And while I was in federal prison, I was able to run into a few prominent people, and one of those prominent persons was from the Black Panthers. Actually, two of them was from the Black Panthers. One of them was Hannibal, by the name of Hannibal, and the other one was Mutulu Shakur. And we used to have conversations. In fact, we had conversations like almost every day because me and Mutulu was on the same unit, and we talked about life. We talked about a lot of things, and it was just me going to prison and waking up every day in a cell and realizing that, hey, this is not something I want to do for the rest of my life. This is not where I want to be. And naturally, by nature, I love helping people in various ways. So it was during those times that I was in prison, and I was writing, and the defining moments was when I discovered that through my writings I was able to help people. I was able to, I could look at their faces and they'll come to me and thank me and congratulate me on different things that I was doing for them. So I was like, yeah, I start taking this more serious.
Right.
So I started writing more, and I stopped like really going to the yard, on the prison yard and conversating with people out on the yard and just, BSing and spending useless time doing nothing. And I started writing more, and, a lot of the conversations I had with Mutulu actually shaped and formed the way, the direction I wanted to write. Mutulu, my dad, which is deceased now, and just seeing just the everyday life in prison, seeing people being murdered and people beaten up and stabbed, and looking at the heartache and the pain and the sorrow in people's faces, knowing that they don't have a chance to go home, and here it is. A lot of people do, and I'm one of those people that has a chance to go home and actually do something. I told myself I need to really, really start taking my life more serious and do something,
Right. Yeah, and, I think those experiences, I can definitely not sit here and say I can talk from those experiences, but what I want to talk about is the fact that you knowing that all the time that you were doing the things that you were doing were absolutely wrong, and then it taking you several times having to be incarcerated to realize that you could do better and to live better. And, I think the thing that's important about this discussion that we're having is the fact that you had some guidance. And, I know a lot of people sit back and say and think that, well, we're all sitting there behind bars, they're all incarcerated, how can they teach each other anything? The most important part, I think, is that we all know that we have something special. We all have intelligence of our own. It's just how you decide to use that intelligence is what's going to determine your lifestyle, right?
Right.
And you made a conscious decision to really decide that I've got to do better for myself. And you talked about earlier that you do have children. I even read that in your bio. So during the time that you were incarcerated, did you have the opportunity to talk to your children? Did they see you on the one side, and then now obviously they see you on another side? How was those experiences for your children?
Well, I was able to communicate with all of my children except for one, because my youngest daughter, she resides in Houston, Texas. So I wasn't able to communicate with her, though I was able to communicate with my other children, and my relationship with them, it wasn't strained or anything like that. They was just like, when I was in, they always wanted to know what happened and why am I in there and when am I coming home. When am I coming home was that was the question that always popped up in the conversation. It seemed like every other sentence or whatever that was coming up. They was understanding. They was very understanding. When I was incarcerated the first time, I only had one child, and she was young. And when I spoke with her, by her being, I believe she was like probably 4 or 5, and she really didn't understand. All she understood was that Daddy wasn't present.
Right.
I wasn't, in the physical, I wasn't there. So she really didn't understand prison. And then, later on in life, when I was incarcerated and I was in the feds, she was able to understand, and, she cried. And so my other kids, they also cried. And when I was released, we talked about it, and the things we talked about was me actually staying out of prison and getting my life on track and the things I was going to do. And, just me being in their lives, it affected them, but it didn't really affect them to where they was like, I don't want to have anything to do with this man, or it wasn't like they didn't know who I was.
Right.
Because I always, even when I was incarcerated and I would talk to him on the phone, or I reached out through letters or whatever, I always would speak positive and teach them things. So, and that stuck with them, and they can still, they remember those things to this day.
Right. Because communication is the key. You communicating with them, even though you were not physically, like you said, there, that communication kept them sane probably, and as well as kept you sane, and helped you continue to realize that your goal, even though the writing was your sanctuary, but knowing that your children, you had something else to look forward to, which was coming home to your children. So I want to talk a little bit. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I kind of want to go back a little bit and talk about the writing experience. Now, you started writing, like I said, you started kind of dabbling while you were incarcerated, but before you got incarcerated, were there opportunities or thought process, if you could remember, growing up, that writing was something that you enjoyed while you were in school?
Actually, I did. When I was in school, I would win contests when I was writing, and a lot of people used to want me to rap, and I delved into the rap game a little bit, but I didn't really like rapping, because like when I was younger, I looked at it as being fake. So I didn't like it, because I like the way I write. I like to write about real life things, stuff that's really actually happening. So I looked at that. I looked at rap as being fake, but I would write poems and things of that nature. And, you know, a lot of times I would even write something, and it just come to me, and I might ball up the paper or whatever and throw it away because of the lifestyle I was in. And I used to look at myself as being negative. So I would say, okay, this ain't gonna materialize into nothing. You know, I'm out here gang banging, I'm selling drugs, and I'm doing this. This is what my life is, and this ain't nothing but a hobby. And then sometimes I'll look at it and be like, it's not even a hobby. It's just something I'm doing. So I didn't take it serious or nothing like that. But I did write. There was times, there was a lot of times I would write before I was even incarcerated. And, I did get incarcerated, like I said, as a youth. And, but I was writing before that too. But, yeah.
And I'm sure that there were people around you or the people you even surrounded yourself by didn't see and understand that, what you were doing. Because to them, education, writing, all that was nowhere near important than out here just making the money in the streets, right?
Exactly. No one. It wasn't even important to me, especially to people I was hanging around. They deemed writing as the only writing someone wanted to do was to write a rap. That's
right.
it. And then people didn't really even want to do that because the streets had grabbed control of everybody's attention. So that's what we was doing. That's what we was into.
Okay, yeah. And what about family? So during those times that you were incarcerated in and out as a youth and, and obviously as an adult and before you got to your adulthood, where was the family at, the support system that we all know is what keeps you together? Like you talked earlier, even though you were incarcerated, you still had the synergy, with your children. How was that for you as a youth growing up?
Well, I had a strong family support system. I've always had. That's always been there in my life because I grew up in a home with my mother and my father. So that was always there, and the support was very, very strong because not only did it come from my mother and my father and my sisters and my brothers, it also came from my uncles and my aunts. And being that none of my uncles and none of my aunts and my mother or my father was ever incarcerated, I looked at that as a good thing. And that kind of helped me, too, because it wasn't like I could make up an excuse and say, well, I came from a broken home and I came from this type of lifestyle where my uncles and my dad was doing this and doing that, so I had to follow in their footsteps. I didn't have no excuses because I was raised correctly. It was just that I wanted to do, I wanted to do the things I wanted to do, and I did them even though I was taught not to do them, and I suffered the consequences for them. But the support system, it was always there. It was definitely always there,
Right, and that's important.
Yeah. Even when I was living in other places, like when I resided in Los Angeles and I resided in Denver, the support system was always there. I always had a support system. It was just the streets was it seemed like, I don't want to say the streets, the lifestyle was stronger than my parents. I will put everything off on me because I understood at a very young age right from wrong. So it was all on me, and I was the one who, made the choices and decisions in life. I wanted to go down this road, so I did it, and I had to suffer those type of consequences. But I had a strong support system, though.
Right, and that's awesome, and I'm sure to this day they're very proud of what you've accomplished and what you're continuing to do. But what I was going to make a quick statement on is that you talked a little bit earlier about the fact that you thought that the streets and the gangs were your family. So what in your mind made you make that decision because you knew, like you said, you had an amazing support system. We all know that it's not always the regular or the norm to have a family when you have the mother and the father, especially when we're talking about our young black men, when most of them are usually raised by a single parent household. So, what made you just balance that out and say in your head, that, hey, this is my family here. These people over here just don't matter right now?
Just being rebellious, being real rebellious, because like I said, I understood right from wrong. And I knew who my family, I knew what my family was. I knew my brothers and sisters and my mother and my father was my family. But I would also look at the gang as my family too. I would look at them as a second family outside of my original family. I would look at them as not as in sense as the gang is my dad and mom, and I got to do what they say. I looked at them as just a togetherness, like just brothers banding together and doing what we did, in that sense, and just being rebellious, because there was times that a lot of the things that I learned from my parents, I would teach a lot of my friends that was in the gangs, and a lot of the things that I taught them, and my father would actually teach them some things too. So, and he actually turned around a lot of their lives. So,
wow.
It was times when it was positive, but for the most part, it was negative because that's what gangs are birthed from. They're birthed from negativity. So that's what it was. And for me, it was just being rebellious. I wanted to do what I wanted to do.
Right, and then like you said, by doing what you wanted to do, you paid for that. And, and like you said, there's no reason to make excuses, and a lot of times we do utilize excuses, like you said, there's, the children that come from the, the single-parent family home, they don't have this, they don't have that, and then at the end of the day, the reality is we do have choices, and like we are all taught the difference between right and wrong, but whatever decision you make is, you're going to have good and bad consequences for that, and it's just that I'm just love how you're talking about and you're truly telling your story. You're not, sitting here and painting it and making it look like, oh, you had this amazing life. And even though you did have an amazing life, you, like I said, took the choice to go down a track that, that you thought was more influential for you, whatever the reason was during that time and that rebellious point in your life that you were going through. I'm just glad that you had those moments that while you were incarcerated that you actually got to meet people who really did understand who you were and that you were not that person. You did not need to be where you were at. So I think, that's an amazing thing about your story, too. But before we move on, I just want to tell everybody, if you are just tuning in, you have been missing out on a phenomenal conversation. I am Kimberly McLemore. I have a phenomenal guest here named author. He's my guest author, Russ Anderson, and we're talking about his book, Who Are You Calling a BITCH? And we're going to be diving into that here in a few minutes. But before we do that, we are going to go into our break. So give us a few minutes and we'll be back. And you want to come back because you do not want to miss hearing about the book, Who Are You Calling a BITCH? We'll be back in a few minutes.
Welcome back to the Author's Corner with your host, author Kimberly McLemore.
All right, hello listeners, and welcome back to the Author's Corner. I am your host again, Kimberly McLemore, and now let's get back into this great conversation with my special guest author, Russ Anderson, who is the author of Who Are You Calling a BITCH, A Guide to a Happier Relationship for the Black King or Queen. All right, welcome back, Russ.
Hey.
All right, we've had some great conversation talking about, a little background about who you are, what you've been through, and it all now starts to come together, and it makes sense, for me and the listeners about how you started to write, and now I really am looking forward to talking about this amazing book, Who Are You Calling a BITCH? First of all, how did you come up with this title?
Well, the way I came up with the title was it was looking at it from a black woman and the young black girls' view, their perspective, and how the world views them and disrespects them all the time. So it's like everybody wants to disrespect them. So I came up with that title, Who Are You Calling a BITCH? And it's looking at them saying, okay, I'm much more than this. I'm someone's grandma. I'm someone's mother. I'm someone's aunt. I'm someone's lover. I'm someone's friend, sister. So, I'm much more than this. Let me tell you who I am. So I came up with the title just looking at it from the black woman and the black girl's point of view.
And you're right. I like the title. Of course, using the term BITCH is when I was coming up, it was fighting words. Okay, it was
right.
And even to this day, if somebody uses that word towards me, that to me is the biggest disrespectful thing you can say to a woman. But the problem and the things that we see in here today, that word is utilized as a positive theme with our young women and our women, period. And, when I think about the type of book that you have provided, is you're looking at it saying, hey, you women are much more than that. So how is it that, you're trying to come up, you have a book of positivity, but then we live in a world today where using that term is considered a positive thing and a cool thing. How do you, mix the two? What do you tell these young women today, or these women, period, who are running around using that term in as a positive way when it's really a negative way of looking at as women and as a human being, period? How do you work that out with these women today? What do you tell them?
Well, when I'm speaking with, if I'm speaking with someone like a young woman, a young black woman, and I would say between the ages, teenager on up into her 20s, young 20s, I try to when I'm conversating with her, I try to see where her head is at, see where her mind is at. And if I see that she's going into that direction where she will accept that word and accept it as being positive in her life, then I have to tell her, okay, look, first of all, that word is negative in my eyes. It's negative because it means a female dog. You're definitely not a dog. You're a human being. You're a beautiful, young, intelligent black woman, first of all. And then I just, I let them know that if someone is calling you the word BITCH, they're automatically disrespecting you. They don't have any respect for you. So you have to be able to understand that and be able to respect yourself first, and then be able to get at the person that's coming at you in that manner, and let them know, like, hey, I'm not that, and this and that and that and this, because like you said, in today's society, that word is used so frequently, and everybody thinks it's the norm, especially our young women. They think that being called a bitch or any of the other words, thoughts, whores, anything. They think that that's them. Because they associate with it because of the music, because of the media. The media portrays the black woman in a negative light, and all these stereotypes and negativity that's going into the minds of the young ones. When they grow up, they start growing up thinking like, okay, this is me. This is what I am, and then they really start to believe that if they hear it in the home and if they hear it from people that they're around daily,
Exactly.
A lot of their relatives and friends. So it becomes normal. So when I talk to them, I try to explain to them about those things, that this is not who you are. Let me explain to you who you are and who you can be. And I talk to them about education. I talk to them about everything in life, every and anything.
Right, right. But it comes from our men. Our
Definitely.
men, our black men and men, period, in general, will use that term when, they don't like us, there's something negative they can find in us, or they don't have it their way. That term and that word is used consistently. And being, a black woman, every day, we have our men who are constantly pulling us down, telling us what they don't like about us and how they won't date us. They have all these negativity things going on. So when you're trying to we're trying to refocus our young women and keep them powerful and make them realize that they are beautiful, because there's always men telling us how we're supposed to look, what we're supposed to say, what we should be wearing, how our hair is supposed to be. There's all these different things. And so, like you said, it starts not just in the home, it's all the other influences that they have surrounding them. So eventually, you do start to think that, well, this is what I am. I am a bad bitch, not realizing that is not a positive thing. It is all negative because of the influences that we have that are around us.
Right.
And so, when I'm hearing you talk about this and the things that you're pouring into these young women, it also absolutely, the women need to hear it, but it definitely has to be poured into our young men, and I'm sure you do that as well. So how do you handle it with your young men? Because, you came from the environment, not because you had to, but let's kind of go back into the incarceration piece where, I'm sure you heard these terms 24/7, and everybody had the same mindset, and everybody had the same thought process. So how do you reach out to these men, these young men today?
Well, when I reach out to them, the first thing I ask them is, would you want someone to disrespect you or disrespect your mother in that manner? And most of the time, the majority of the time, the answer is no. If someone disrespects my mother in that manner like that, I'll do this or I'll do that to them. And then I just go from there like, hey, well, if you don't want someone to disrespect your mother or any female that's in your family like that, then why would you disrespect the next? Because the next person feels the same way. And I let them know that, like you were saying, it comes from our men a lot. And I tell them, these and it's a lot going on that's wrong in the rap world, where in this music they're pushing this music onto the youth, and our young men feel like everything that's being said is fact, is true. So they hear this and they think that, okay, this is the way I'm supposed to talk. This is the way I'm supposed to speak to our women, and it's okay. So I let them know that, young brother, this is not how you're supposed to do it. This is not how you speak to our women. Our women have been, I explained to them that our women have been through so much within, since slavery, since we were brought over here, for you to call one of our women out of their name and disrespect them in that manner and the things they went through by being raped and murdered and humiliated and disrespected, and still to this day it's going on. That's that's not right. So I bring them to the light and let them see that, so they won't continue that,
Right. Yeah, and I like the way you talk in the conversation about that. Is this what you call your mother? Is this how you see your sister? Is this how you see any woman that is a part of your life? We brought you into the world. So, when you hear our men, talk to us in that manner, or even with the women referring to each other in that manner, it breaks my heart, because it's one of those situations where, it's the ignorance of it all, and not realizing that, every day you are putting each other down, and you think it's cute, and it's not cute. It's that total disrespect. Right, the total disrespect, and then, the outside world looks at us in that manner as well. They may not say it always to our face, but they see the same thing, and they're like, well, if they can call you that, why can't I call you that?
Right.
It's the constant reminder that we as human beings need to respect each other just as human beings. You don't even have to dive into the color. You don't have to get into all those other conversations. It's just basic human respect, that you don't need to put each other down in that manner to have a conversation. Using those terms and those words to relate to each other when you're communicating. So I like having this piece of conversation, but I really kind of now want to dive into the book. Your book is a guide-based book for, it looks as if it's for women and men who are in relationships and preparing for marriage. So I would like for you to talk to me more about your book and the listeners. So, we want to learn exactly what your guide is about. And you can also, share one of your favorite excerpts or one of your chapters that you would like to talk about as well.
Okay. First off, like we was just discussing about being called out your names and everything, I have a chapter that's called Bad, BITCHs and Real Women and Thoughts and Hoes. So when I was writing this, writing and preparing my book, I wanted to help people that had just got into relationships or that's already in relationships, but the relationship is stagnant. It's not going anywhere, and there's many elements that come into play why the relationships are at a standstill, because there is a lot of our young men and women who don't know, and there's a lot of older ones that don't know either that should know. And respect is one of the factors. That's one of the main factors. Communication, like some of the chapters in my book is called like She's Your Woman and Not Your Mama. I have a chapter that's called The Quality of Men, and I have a chapter that's dealing on, people who lie a lot, cheaters, and drugs and gangs and social media and being gay. There's nothing wrong with a person that's gay. If that's who you are and what you are, then cool. Me, when I wrote about it in my book, I wrote about it in the sense of there is a lot of our men that's gay, and they don't tell the women, and then that creates confusion and a lot of commotion in the relationship. So, I touched on that. I touched on that in the book, and I also explained in that chapter about because I've seen a lot of things go on in prison where men was doing a lot of things that they shouldn't have been doing, and then a few men I know had been released from prison, and they had messed with men inside the prison, and they started messing with our women. I'm not for that. I don't like that, because you can spread diseases like that, and I feel our women, they deserve to know the truth. If you don't want to tell the woman the truth, what you was doing, then don't deal with her, and then you don't have to be brought to that. So I touched on that, and I touched on protecting your queen, which is the black woman. And that's, chapter 2 and chapter 10, I really, really love that, because it's talking about protecting the black woman. And in today's society, that's not going on at all. I don't see anybody protecting the black woman. In fact, I know for a fact that the black woman is not being protected, because every time I turn on the TV, she's being disrespected. She's being disrespected in commercials, on movies. She's being disrespected by the police. She's being disrespected by black men that's supposed to love her and cherish her. So, my book was mainly about just touching on a lot of bases, touching on a lot of things that's going on within the black communities. And it's affecting the relationships, and it's just showing and teaching how we can help one another if we know what's going on, bringing each other to the light and being aware of the things we should do and shouldn't do.
Right. And a lot of the topics that you just mentioned, the chapters that are in your book, these are things and conversations that we have had in our communities, in our homes, with our friends, with our, acquaintances consistently. And then there still never seems to be that consistent part of really taking care of each other the way they should be taken care of.
Right.
And that, I think that's the part that's the most frustrating, is that when you know that you're mistreating your woman or your man in a way, it's wrong, but then yet still you keep doing it. But then people have the audacity to go out here and school somebody else about, well, this is how you should be treating her, but then yet still they're not walking the walk and talking the talk. So, and you said there was 2 of your favorite chapters that you had. Could you read to us one of the chapters that you, out of the one of the 2, and really explain why you chose that particular excerpt from the book?
Okay. I'll read from chapter 2, and the title of chapter 2 is She's Your Woman, Not Your Mama. And the reason I chose that title in the first place is because it's really self-explanatory within the black community, because a lot of black men feel as if their woman is their mother by by a lot of the things, just basic things they say to her on a daily, and the things they do. And I'll read some of those things.
Okay.
Some of the things was okay. I said, if you have any of these traits as a man, I would ask that you reevaluate yourself a bit more closely and attempt to rectify the problem before engaging into any relationship with a woman. And one of them was being very selfish, that you only think about yourself and not others. You don't consider others' feelings. And then another one was you can't admit to your faults and wrongdoings. You love to blame others for your mishaps, and even when you've been caught red-handed, And a lot of one of the things that I seen that I wrote about too was that I seen that a lot of the black men been throwing, temper tantrums, like they 10 years old or something,
Yep.
And, not.
I'm sorry, I should laugh, but no, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Not being able to get their way, And I put in my book that's a sign of a man child, And not being able to manage money correctly because you're hanging with, you have responsibilities at home. You have responsibility. If you're in a relationship and you're with someone, you're with a woman, you have responsibilities. You have rent. You have all type of source of bills. You may have rent or you may have mortgage. You have to buy food. You have kids. You have to buy clothes. So, a lot of men mismanage money. They going out to the clubs, and it's nothing wrong with having fun and having leisure time. Just know how to manage money, and then don't get wrong when it's time for that money to be present in time to pay bills and it's not there, and then she gets mad at you, you know. And then one of the biggest things was, you know, getting upset because she's not catering to your needs, you know. And I'm speaking in the sense of you're looking at her as your mother instead of your woman. You know, you're not 8, 9, and 10 and 11 years old anymore. You're a grown man, so you should be able to pick up after yourself. And it's not her duty or job to fix you dinner every day, or you know, you could take the initiative to do that because she may be working and come home tired, and here it is, you probably at home and you probably been sitting up with your homeboys, smoking, doing whatever it is you do, playing video games, and then, you know, you wanted to cater to your needs. So that was a big thing right there, you know.
You're absolutely right. That we could probably write a whole book on that with each other. Okay,
a whole book.
That's another conversation on another show.
Yep.
But you're right.
You know,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. No. I was just agreeing with what you just said.
Yeah, and the topics, like I said, a lot of the topics and the information that you just provide, these are everyday things that are constant conversations. You know, women constantly complain about, men are constantly complaining about, but at the same token, nobody is stepping up and doing what they need to do to make a difference, you know, and within themselves. And so your guidebook is on point, is absolutely on point. And the one thing that I wanted to ask you about, you talked about in the book there a minute ago about selfishness. Now, what was your understanding and your thought process of men being selfish in the relationship?
Well, a lot of men always think about, they think about themselves, you know. They always putting themselves first. Now, it's nothing wrong with you being it's nothing wrong with you loving yourself or anything. But what I mean by being selfish, they're not considering their spouse's feelings or even the children's feelings, you know. They may do things like You have men that's on a day-to-day basis who will look at their women and look at their children and be like, oh, well, I'm going to this store anyway, and I'm going to go buy myself a pair of shoes, or I'm going to go, you know, go to the store and grab myself something to eat and whatever it may be, and not even think about the home, you know. So it's and being selfish on so many levels.
Right, you know? the all about me attitude.
Right, not being considerate of the next feeling. All about me.
Yeah, like I said, your book sounds phenomenal, and I mean, we could be on here talking for hours because, like, all the information you're providing is exactly the things that, you know, we hear about daily. But I do have a question now. You have it as a guidebook. You're talking about these are the things to look out for. But what are some of the things that you tell them to do differently? You know, so here's the problem. Now here's how you can resolve it. Do you provide that in your guidebook?
Oh, most definitely. Like I said, communication, I feel, is the best key, because without communication, you don't know what the other one is thinking. You don't know what your significant other is going through or what they're thinking. So you have to have communication, and it will definitely bring clarity and understanding to whatever is going on inside the home. That's if you're living with each other, or if you're not living with each other. You might, you know, it's oftentimes you get someone in a relationship and somebody always like, well, I feel this person is cheating on me, or I feel this is going on. But you have a feeling okay? And sometimes the feeling you may be on point, but
right.
you don't know for a fact until you actually ask this person, y'all both sit down like adults and have a meaningful conversation without screaming and arguing. Then, you can communicate, and then you actually know what's going on if that person is being truthful and honest with you. So it's definitely communication. That would be one of the main ones to solving the problems. You have to be able to communicate and definitely being honest. Being honest, a trustworthy person, depending on what's going on. That's but communication, I would say, would be one of the most main keys in the relationship.
Right, because usually when you communicate, you will be able to take the other steps you need to take, once you figure out what the problem is, or, and then you can figure out how to resolve it from there. So absolutely. So communication is the key, and that's with everything. Everything that we've talked about tonight and overall, at the end of the day, the communication is what got you from point A to B to C to D. So from the time that even when you were a youth, your family was communicating with you and telling you these are the right things to do. Then you had the other people who were communicating with you in their own way, saying, no, this is not where you need to be with us. And then once you were incarcerated, you had other people communicating with you in a positive way. So all from the time we've been talking and from if you go back and look at everything that's happened to you in life, and as you say today, communication will help you resolve everything that you need to understand. And then once you have that communication, you can truly move forward because you'll know how to move forward. Now, some people may not want to move forward. They may want to stay stagnant in their life and keep doing what they're doing. But at the end of the day, once you can take the responsibility of what it is you've done and you start communicating with those that help you move forward, and then within yourself, because 90% of the time you already know what the answer is. It's just whether or not you're going to decide to go in that right direction. And so I will say to you that I am extremely proud of you, and I'm very thankful that I've had the opportunity to have you on my show this evening. You have been a phenomenal guest, Russ. And, what I would like you to do before we leave off the show is that please tell everyone how they can get a copy of the book and how they can reach out to you as well.
First off, I would like to just thank you for even having me on the show. I appreciate that a great deal. You could purchase the book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You could go on Roku. Oh, not Roku. But, I forget what the name of that website is. Something like that with an R name is put on there. But definitely Barnes and Noble. Definitely Amazon. You can go online and you can purchase it like that. And you could get in touch with me. I'm on YouTube. I'm a YouTuber. You can reach me at Star Wolf Entertainment TV, or you can reach out to me on Instagram at famous_Star Wolf.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show with me this evening. It has been an absolute pleasure. It really has. And for everyone else, you're quite welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it. And for my rest of my listeners, I want to just remind you that if you would like to be a sponsor or a guest on the Author's Corner, you want to send a short bio, your book cover, and a professional pic to KimberlyMcLemore@gmail.com. Again, that is KimberlyMcLemore@gmail.com. Also, a couple of quick things I would like to point out to you that I do have a new ebook release, Are You Living or Existing? The Pros and Cons of Balancing Life is still on for sale for $3.99 on Amazon. So we still got that special running until the end of the month. And then also join me if you're in the Eastern Pennsylvania area on Saturday, August the 17th, for the Are You Living or Existing Self-Publishing Workshop and Entrepreneurial Network Brunch. So we're real excited about that. If you are interested, you need to register through Eventbrite or Facebook, and the cost for that is $75. But it is a 4-hour event, plus you will have the workshop, and you will be able to meet some other amazing entrepreneurs, and that's going to be in Easton, Pennsylvania. Like I said, if you want to go to my Facebook page, you will be able to find all that information. And you can also follow me on all my other social media platforms, such as Twitter, Instagram, and, of course, the Women's Small Business Initiative. I have a YouTube channel there as well. And, again, I would like to thank my sponsor for the evening, who was Sage Solutions GTM, LLC. Their website is www.sagesolutionsgtm.com. And I want to say thank you again for tuning in tonight to Vigilant Broadcasting. Please stop by and like our Talk Radio and TV Network, LLP. Our social media platforms are Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And, of course, please join me next month for another amazing show. But until then, you all have a good evening. Good night.
Good night, everyone, and thank you for tuning in tonight. We'll be back next month on Friday evening at 7 p.m. EST with 2 more amazing guests. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Periscope at author Kimberly McLemore and at Talk Radio TV Network, LLP.